A very interesting fact about Canada is that, however, despite this vast territory for a relatively small population of much less than 40 million, more than 90% of Canadians live within 150 miles of the US border, United States border, as that's where all the activity and so much talked about Canadian housing boom is centered. Welcome to Canada, the second largest country in the world, a country with only one neighbor, the United States. Canada shares 8,891 kilometers of border with its only neighbor. In the last 10 years, house prices in Canada have more than doubled. Real estate investment returns have been historically phenomenal. According to a Statistics Canada report, since last decade, Canadians spend bigger share of their investment in housing and real estate than on any startup businesses, as when invested in a startup or a new business adds up to only 9% of the country's GDP, whereas on the other hand, residential assets contribute to 22% of Canada's national wealth. With the kind of craziness experienced pre, during and post-COVID era, when money was so easily available with bank interest reaching historical lows, housing became much more favored investment in our country. Even I would prefer to put my money in a residential house than a business where money gets bifurcated into commercial real estate, machinery, equipment, licenses, inventory, manpower, etc., and not to forget the hard work and the mammoth risk component. How can we forget the bitter death of numerous small businesses during COVID? Hence, it was but natural, a very subtle shift that Canadians experienced, that they much rather spend on housing and real estate than on a business. And this result was and had been in manifestation since last more than a decade. But this lopsided growth was bound to have negative impact on country's economic trajectory, as it is businesses and business investment are extremely crucial to drive economic growth of any country. Without ascending business growth being part of the country's GDP, the country's economy is bound to suffer. Business investment in the long run create more opportunities for job, research and development, more goods and services are produced, attracting more national and foreign investment, and all of it eventually driving the country's growth. Since last decade, this shift in investments has resulted in less and less jobs being created, less and less opportunities as growth in country's businesses contributing lesser in our national GDP. According to a survey report by World Economic Forum in 2024, Canadian businesses rarely astonish the world in comparison to its southern neighbor. Only 6 Canadian companies were able to make it to the list of Fortune 500 companies, whereas a considerable share of these Fortune 500 companies comes from the United States. In fact, for the 10 consecutive years, American company Walmart has remained on the top spot on the Fortune 500 companies. Another factor affecting Canada's economy are its favorable economic policies, which are quite in sync with its neighbor. In fact, the policies are quite made according to our one and only neighbor. According to Statistics Canada's report, Canada and United States have over $960.9 billion in total trade, accounting for close to 2/3, 63.4% of more than 1.5 trillion worldwide trade. American companies enjoy certain tax benefits and favorable tariffs in Canada. Also, when budding new or startup companies in Canada go public, they end up losing tax benefit and quite often end up being acquired by larger foreign firms, which in most cases are American. Combination of all such factors end up making Canadian economy a little less productive than its counterpart. Another report by Statista.com states in G7 countries' share of world GDP, Canada's contribution has remained essentially flat. Not only in business revenues and growth, on an average Canadian makes 60,000 Canadian dollars per year. Whereas if we just cross a few miles and cross the border and reach America, the average American makes about 80,000 US dollars per year. With all that said, Canada has its own extremely unique advantages like its vast natural resources, a pool of extremely well educated, talented, and go getter population. Its aggressive immigration policies brought in this massive workforce, which is creme la creme. That's why they were able to immigrate to Canada. Canadian banking is among the top ones in the world. In fact, Canadian banking has ranked first in the G7 countries for 11 consecutive years. Despite whatever temporary economic problems Canada might be facing, currently it is by all standards one of the strongest and solid economies in the world. One of the least corrupt countries in the world, Canada has solid foundation. With its stable democratic government, extremely welcoming and polite people, very solid social security systems in place since decades, it has remained among the top 10 countries where people are happy and has maintained its top 10 slot for best places in the world to live. I myself have had the opportunity to stay in Southeast Asia, to Middle East and North America. But no place beats Canada. In spite of spending major of my life outside this place, Canada feels like home. And a sense of belonging I feel for Canada is hard to express in words. Whatever economic challenges at the moment Canada is facing, but I'm sure in no time this will all go away. Hope you like this video. In fact, if you have anything to add on to it or what's your opinion about Canada's economic crisis at the moment, please feel free to put it in the comment section below, and see you in the next one.